The most terrifying sound in the world isn't a scream. It's a knock you weren't waiting for. You're not expecting anyone. You're settled in. The house is quiet, and then 3 heavy knocks echo from your front door. For most of us, it's just a passing moment of anxiety. But for Some, what waits on the other side of that door is the beginning of a nightmare. A nightmare with wide, empty, black eyes. Tonight, we're diving into the creepy legend of the black-eyed children. These aren't just ghost stories. They're real encounters that even skeptics can't ignore. The stories almost always begin the same way. A lone person, often at home or in their car, is approached by 1 or 2 children, usually between the ages of 6 and 16. They seem ordinary at first, maybe a bit pale, their clothes slightly outdated, but there's an unnerving stillness about them. They speak in a monotone, surprisingly articulate for their apparent age. Their request is always simple, always innocent on the surface. "Can we come in? We need to use your phone. Can you give us a ride?" But as they speak, a feeling of unnatural dread washes over the person they re-talking to. A sense of panic, of fight or flight, that makes no logical sense. Why would you be terrified of a couple of kids? Then you see their eyes. They're not just dark, they are solid black. No iris, no sclera, no white at all. Just 2 deep, empty, soulless voids staring back at you. It's a sight so unnatural, so fundamentally wrong, that your brain struggles to process it. The initial feeling of dread intensifies into pure, instinctual terror. Every fiber of your being screams at you. Do not let them in. The first widely circulated account came from a journalist named Brian Bethel. In 1996, he posted his encounter on an online mailing list, detailing a night he was parked in his car outside a movie theater. 2 boys approached his window. They asked for a ride home to get money for the movie. Bethel felt an inexplicable fear grip him. He described it as a fight-or-flight response kicking in. He was confused by his own reaction until he noticed their eyes. He described them as coal black. Panicked, he quickly drove away, looking back to see the boys had vanished without a trace. Since Bethel's story, thousands of similar encounters have been reported all over the world. The details vary, but the core elements remain terrifyingly consistent. The children appear out of nowhere. They have an uncanny ability to instill overwhelming fear. They insist on being invited in. And of course, those black, vacant eyes. Let's talk about that insistence. They don't force their way in. They need your permission. They become more and more demanding, their calm demeanor cracking to reveal an underlying aggression. "We won't hurt you. You have to let us in. We can't come in unless you tell us it's okay." This detail has led many to compare them to classic folklore creatures, like vampires, who also cannot enter a home without an invitation. Is this some ancient rule of the supernatural world that even these strange entities must obey? One chilling story comes from a woman who was home alone with her dog. Late one evening, there was a knock at her front door. She looked through the peephole and saw 2 young children, a boy and a girl, standing on her porch. It was cold and they weren't wearing coats. Feeling a pang of sympathy, she opened the door a crack, keeping the chain on. The boy spoke, his voice flat. "Ma'am, we're lost. Can we come in and use your phone to call our parents?" As he spoke, her dog, normally friendly, began to growl viciously at the door. It was then that she felt a wave of pure dread. She looked closer at the children and saw their eyes, solid black. She slammed the door shut and locked it, her heart pounding. The knocking grew louder, more urgent this time. The boy's voice was no longer polite. It was angry. "Let us in. We need to use your phone now." She backed away from the door, terrified, and called the police. By the time they arrived, just a few minutes later, the children were gone. There were no footprints in the snow on her porch. So what are these beings? Theories abound. Some believe they are demons or other malevolent spirits, taking the form of children to prey on our natural instinct, to help the young and vulnerable. The black eyes are seen as a sign of their soulless, demonic nature. Their need for an invitation is a classic trope in demonology. Require a consensual act, a moment of weakness, to gain power over you. Another popular theory is that they are aliens, perhaps They are hybrids, or a specific type of extraterrestrial that uses a psychic projection to instill fear. The strange, monotone speech and outdated clothing could be a sign of a non-human entity trying and failing to perfectly mimic human behavior. Their black eyes could be protective lenses, or their natural biological state. Why they need to be invited in remains a mystery in this theory. But perhaps it's a form of psychological experiment or a rule of engagement we don't understand. Then there are the more paranormal or interdimensional explanations. Are they ghosts? The spirits of children who met a tragic end? Could these entities be travelers from a parallel plane, momentarily slipping through the thin veil that separates our world from another? This could explain their sudden appearances and disappearances, and their general sense of otherness. Every instinct in your body tells you that these beings are a glitch in our reality. They don't quite belong here because, well, they don't. Yet, for those who seek the cold truth, the answer might be less supernatural. Skeptics, of course, have more grounded explanations. They argue that the stories are simply a modern urban legend, a campfire tale for the digital age, propagated by the internet. The black eyes could be a misinterpretation, large, dilated pupils in low light, or simply a trick of the mind during a moment of fear. Our brains are wired to find patterns, and when we are scared, we can easily misperceive things. The feeling of dread could be a simple, rational reaction to being approached by strangers at night, which the storyteller then embellishes for dramatic effect. But the sheer number of reports and the consistency of the details from people who claim to have had no prior knowledge of the legend is what keeps this mystery alive. People from all walks of life, in different countries, all describe the exact same thing: that overwhelming, unnatural fear, the persistent, almost hypnotic demand to be invited in, and those terrifying, empty, black eyes. It's the question that haunts every survivor. What happens if you actually cross that line and let them in? We rarely get an answer, because at that point, the stories become much darker and much more scarce. Few who claim to have made that mistake are willing or able to talk about it. The vague accounts that do exist speak of misfortune, illness, and psychological trauma plaguing them afterward. Some tales hint at people disappearing entirely. It's as if opening the door to them is opening a door to a personal hell from which there is no escape. They don't just want to use your phone, they want something from you. To let them in is to lose everything: your energy, your safety, maybe even your soul. One of the most unsettling aspects of the black-eyed children phenomenon is its connection to our deepest psychological fears. The fear of the unknown, the uncanny valley, the violation of our safest space, our home. Children are supposed to be symbols of innocence, but these beings twist that into something horrifying. They use our own compassion against us. So, the next time you hear that unexpected knock on your door late at night, pause for a moment, look through the peephole, and if you see a pair of small children standing there, before you even think about turning the knob, take a very, very close look at their eyes. Because according to the countless stories, your life might just depend on what you see and on your ability to say no and keep that door shut. Thank you for joining me on this dive into the shadows. If you have your own chilling encounter to share, or a theory about the black-eyed children, leave it in the comments below. Ready for more explorations into the unknown? Like, subscribe, and never miss a deep dive into the unexplained, finding the missing pieces of history, only here on Forgotten Clues.